I've got the long description, short description, you've got the master story written. Now, if we can get somebody, if we can capture their attention and they've gone, oh, this sounds like the place for me, the next logical step is they're going to start to look for a book now button and start to actually look at your individual rooms. What room's right for me? So there's two things in here. There's room names and room descriptions, and they're the next two sections we're going to work through. These are critically important because it's at this point here you can get dropout. You can get people go, sounds good, click, and there's just something's out of kilter. Something doesn't align, or they don't comprehend. They just can't make sense of the story in front of them. So it's really important we get really clear and uniformed with our room names and our room descriptions. Because if they're only on your site for moments, and they've got to quickly be able to, well, you've got to be able to quickly articulate what that room represents, and then make a decision about it, whether to keep reading, keep looking, keep clicking. So room names is a really important one. If we get their name wrong, you'll lose them straight away. So we need to get it to a point where they can, in like a split second, go, oh, that sounds like me. So, yes, it's good to use words like deluxe and superior and all that sort of stuff, and I still encourage that. But if fancy words are getting in the road of comprehension and having a really descriptive name, we need to rethink that and put it in place. But it's also, with room names, there's also the relationship from one room type to another. So it's having some consistency there, that the room name itself is descriptive and tells the story very, very quickly and succinctly, but it also is relevant to the next room down that's listed. So they can say, that's a budget room, that's a dearer room, but better. So they can actually make those quick assumptions in their brain. So again, we've introduced a framework to help you review your existing room names. So what we do here with the naming conventions, and that's a common term we use. What are the naming conventions, the room naming conventions in your hotel? We want you to put them down the left in the blue. So let's say I've listed some examples there. And this is, what I've actually put in place is actually not a bad example of where you should aim to be. And hopefully you can recognise the consistency and the pattern that I've got there. That I've got, the first three are all called rooms. For want of a better, I love a fancier name, but room really sort of describes exactly what it is, as opposed to apartment. Apartment tells a different story. So I've categorised them, so I've got rooms and apartments. And then if you look closely, you can see I've got standard, deluxe and luxury. So I'm actually trying to indicate that quality level in the name. So they may never read the room description, but from the room name itself, they're starting to make decisions. And I've also got in there, obviously, whether it's a queen or a king. So it's actually all more about type, or the bedding that's in there. So you can see the framework that I've built. I've got 4 areas, or potentially 4 areas that you may want to play with. So you need, I like to view a room name in components. And these are the components that I put there. So you've got a quality or a style. So that's the budget or the luxury or the superior or deluxe or whatever word you want to try and put in there. Look, standard as a word is pretty uninspiring, but sometimes it's the most appropriate. And so is budget. But at the same time, if you want to try and be true to the product, budget or economy may be a very appropriate word to use. It's uninspiring, yes, but let's not overpromise. So what quality or style of room is it? The second area is bedding type or capacity. So you want to try and indicate, queen, king, family, 2-bedroom, that sort of thing. So people can very quickly assess, okay, what's in that room? So they've got a quality, style, a capacity, and then a room type. So something very practical here. Is it a room? Is it an apartment? Is it a hostel? Is it a cabana? Like, what sort of room type is it? So it actually tells the story very quickly, because most people will not read the detail. So the room names are very, very important. So this template is really for you to go through and just have a play with your existing room naming conventions and potentially reshift that. We've seen significant gains for properties that have redone this because everything was out of kilter. There was no congruence and people didn't really understand the difference between one room to the next. So the main message here is that it's all about understanding what room fits where in the sequence and telling the story quickly and succinctly, if I can say that word properly. So that's room naming conventions. I'll now move on to room descriptions. So room descriptions, and you'll notice in the Excel template that the new room names that you put in will actually self-populate through to this page. And you can just go through a similar sort of concept. I want you to rewrite your room descriptions. So I want you to think about what you're saying. I want you to be brief. Like literally, if it's 2 sentences is tops, but you need to be consistent in what you say. If you're talking about this room beds 2 people, I want every room description to start with the discussion around capacity. Or if you start with, this is the most luxurious room, I want every room description to start with room style or room quality. And then you, as you flow through, each sentence will say 2 or 3 things about the room, but you have the consistent flow. So if you do hold their attention long enough and they do read the description, they might read a second description, they're actually able to line them up and make sense of it. We just don't want to confuse the booker. The harder we make it, the more likely they are to be one of those 22 to 38 web pages they flick off to go onto another one. We want to make the ease of use and the messaging so simple for them. So rewrite your job descriptions, your room descriptions, but be consistent in where you place the messaging about the rooms. I'm hoping that makes sense. Talk about the same things, the same spot in the same sentence for each room description. Keep them brief, 1 to 2 sentences tops. Remembering that most platforms, including your website, does or should have the ability to talk about tea and coffee facilities and has got a microwave in the room. So the inclusions, you don't need to list all the inclusions in the description. You can actually select that through use of icons or dot points or whatever. And people aren't going to read that level of detail. So the 1 to 2 sentences is really about telling the story, making it appealing to why they would want to stay there. So that's room descriptions. Before we move into the final 2 areas.